Welcome back to Full Circle Ancestry and the first Perspectives episode in the German Ancestral Heritage series. As I mentioned in Part 1, each of the four main parts of this series will be accompanied by a companion episode focused less specifically on my personal family heritage, to provide a broader context for the areas we visited in the corresponding main episode. As such, more Czechia wanderings will zoom out on Czechia's Takov district to give perspective on the modern area and what was happening here when my future great-great-grandfather Georg Janka was living in Petlarn/Žebraky from 1869 until around 1890. All the villages we dealt with in Part 1 are in the district of Takov, also known in the days of the Kingdom of Bohemia as Takau. It is on the western edge of the Czech Republic, bordering with Germany. The district covers about 530 square miles, nearly 1,400 square kilometers, which for comparison is a little less than twice the size of all 5 boroughs of New York City. The district is named for the largest town within it. Let's check it out. Today home to about 12,500 people, Takov's town population in the late 1880s was around 5,500. Takov is on the Mjr River, which is fun to say but isn't a river of great historical consequence. Comparison of a mid-1800s map with today's satellite view shows that the town's center's basic layout remains intact. The main square, palace, 3 main churches, and even the set of mill ponds to the west of the river still serve as anchor points. Even more fun than the name of the river are the town's fairly well-preserved protective walls, which began to be built in the 1300s and remain intact in large segments, though interrupted by the vestiges of modernization. Takov's coat of arms is sufficiently aggressive, but the twin-tailed lion's outstretched arms do make one feel welcome, don't they? There is also a palace in Takov, sometimes referred to as a castle, but not living up to that lofty a translation of the Czech term zamek for my money. I think palace is more suitable. In any case, lying on the banks of the fun-to-say Mjr River, it is a centerpiece of the town's historic district. A series of books, published under the authorship of Johann Gottfried Sommer, provides a textual survey of all the lands of Bohemia, and Takov falls into a volume published in 1838. This precedes my great-great-grandfather's time by a generation or so, but it paints a picture of Takov and its surroundings that would have more closely resembled his experience than ours. Sommer talks about a main town surrounded by ring walls, a so-called hospital suburb along the river, the Gensbühl quarter on the north side, and the monastery suburb to the east. Though the town has grown outward substantially from its core, evidence of the old town does remain. The Church of the Assumption was built in the early 1300s. It is an impressive structure, standing on the highest ground in Takov. A Roman Catholic church, its current neo-Gothic style was from a rebuild in the early 1900s. The Church of St. Wenceslas is said to be the first in the town. Although closed in 1780 by order of the Emperor, for reasons unknown to me, it was restored and reopened in 1821 by the Windisch-Grätz family, of whom I will speak more in a moment. Their family crypt lies below the floor, and the outside of the structure is also surrounded by stones marking the earlier burial places of other prominent townspeople. Originally Roman Catholic, the building now serves the Eastern Rite Greek Catholic community. The Church of St. Mary Magdalena was a former Franciscan monastery, the first in Bohemia, founded in the middle of the 1400s. It was destroyed during the 30 Years' War, after which it was rebuilt and expanded, but it was damaged at the end of World War II, which led to its closure. The property is now converted to housing the surprisingly impressive Museum of the Bohemian Forest. The museum's courtyard features a stone cross that once stood in the now-defunct village of Poreo-Purșau that was discussed in Part 1. The museum also houses many artifacts from the region's past, as well as some models, such as this one of the castle in Prânda, the remains of which we will visit at the end of this episode. Also on display are lovely paintings such as these. Preserved in the small chapel room is a roughly life-sized carving of the Last Supper, retrieved from the Church of St. Anna in Poreo-Purșau before its abandonment. Maps in the museum cover such critical topics as the history of breweries in the district, and its being caught in the crossfire during the U.S. Army's liberation of the western portion of the country at the end of World War II. In his compendium, Zomer also speaks of fires in Tachov in 1543, 1616, 1647, 1666, 1718, 1748, 1774, 1776, 1777, and 1818. Given this track record, plus the heated encounters at the end of World War II and the ensuing dismantling of a decent portion of the district due to its large German population, perhaps we should be surprised that anything at all remains from Tachov's historical infrastructure. But thankfully it does, and as we look at the town square, its fountain, and its Marian column, let's talk about the ruling class in Tachov in the days of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and specifically the Windisch-Graetz family that I mentioned earlier. Traced back to 1242, that family purchased the domain of Tachov in 1781, adding it to their other possessions and making the town's palace something of a home base for the family. Over the centuries, they moved up the noble ranks from Freiherr, Baron, to Graf, Count, and eventually to Fürst, Prince, where they remained until the noble class as a functional group was completely abolished after World War I. Although bizarrely, given the happenings of the last 100-plus years, the practice of identifying the head of house still carries on. While working up the ladder of nobility, this improbably complicated coat of arms developed to represent the family. I have no idea what any of it means. In the earlier days, peasants within the lands of the Bohemian noble families did familiar duty as subjects of the nobility. They were required to perform a set amount of labor in service to the ruling class. They needed permission to relocate or even to marry, and so on. After 1848, when serfdom as such was formally abolished in the Austrian Empire, the peasants had more protections and even access to land ownership. Yet the nobility continued to stick around and probably didn't gleefully welcome the peasants into the palace for luncheon. From then on, bigwigs such as the Windisch-Graetz princes focused on politics, military command, and diplomacy within the empire. When my great-great-grandfather Georg Janka was born in 1869, one Alfred Josef Nikolaus Guntram, also known as Alfred II, or the second prince of Windisch-Graetz, was the head of the family. He had commanded 2 regiments in the Austrian defeat at Königgrätz in 1866, was subsequently shot in the stomach and captured, but survived. He died in the palace in Tachov in 1876, leaving his only child to take the helm of the noble family. This was the aristocratically appropriately named Alfred August Karl Maria Wolfgang Erwin, that is Alfred III, or the 3rd Prince of Windisch-Graetz. In addition to any duties he might have held as Prince of the Windisch-Graetz family holdings, Alfred III became Minister-President of Austria in 1893 for about a year and a half, then served on the Imperial Council, the empire's legislative body, until the end of World War I. All of this is to say that Tachov and its surrounding lands were not nothing in the context of the prestige of the empire in the latter part of the 1800s. Yet, let's not blow this status out of proportion. Takov was one of many dozens of districts in Bohemia, not to mention the broader empire, each with their own domains and the corresponding nobility vying for the attention of even higher nobility. Let's make one more stop today in the small town of Primda, known as Frauenberg in German. It is known for the ruined castle which sits on the hill above the town proper. It also lays claim to a much simpler and far more cuddly coat of arms than the one of the Windisch-Graetz family. A set of bells made from various local wood signal the start of the journey. Even only part way up, there is a commanding view of the town. A small chapel stands along the path, and the ruins of the structure come into view. The Primda Castle ruin is a silent remnant of a defensive fortress mentioned as early as 1126. In the world of that time, protection was paramount, especially in a border region. Its utility waned long ago, however, being described as falling into ruin as early as 1609. Today it serves merely as the goal of a moderate hike with great views. To cap off my visit to Primda Castle, I stopped at a well-positioned restaurant at the base of the hill, complete with a poster of the local fauna and one showing all the rulers of the Czech lands from its earliest foundation to the modern day. A cool Czech beer was a nice way to wrap up the day and complete my brief but educational tour of the district of Takov. I hope you enjoyed the first Perspectives episode of the German Ancestral Heritage series. Thank you for watching, and as always, please press the like button if you've gotten this far. Be on the lookout for the next episode, where we'll cross the border into Germany itself and spend some time in Bavaria. Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss it. Bye for now.